A striking example of a sharp change in views on the essence of life is the story of the clinical death of a physicist and designer of rocket information systems, Vladimir Grigorievich Efremov, which occurred in the spring of 1996. Here it is with minor abbreviations. So, a typical atheist, Vladimir Efremov in 1996, at the age of 62, suddenly lost consciousness. His sister, a medical worker, immediately began to shake him, but there was no pulse or breathing. When I was seized by a coughing fit and I could no longer breathe, the thought flashed, "Atsek, this is the end." And nevertheless, soon the state of pain and heaviness suddenly disappeared, and instead there was lightness and clarity. Yes, and then I flew into that same endless pipe that many now know about, and saw a bright light at the end, completely indescribable in power and brightness. I was very surprised that consciousness did not leave me for a second. I understood everything perfectly and thought clearly, realizing that I had died. And this strange thinking after the end of life was amazing. But I thought and tried to somehow control my state, because I was flying. And we all know how to fly in our sleep, right? But as a scientist, I still tried to give this flight some controllability, and it was quite interesting whether I could change my flight speed, direction, route. And reminder, Efremov worked on space programs for many years, so his desire is not so strange. And it turned out that control is possible. Moreover, thinking became unusual, multi-purpose, multi-level, and I could simultaneously solve several problems, transferring results from one channel to another. And all this was done not only at the level of concepts and words, but also at the level of images. And surprisingly, my flight became controllable. I was able to turn around and return to the point that had recently been passed. At the same time, I not only flew in different directions. After mental control, I could move to a given point immediately, jumping over a distance. But it turned out that the relief points, and there was a certain relief, a certain geography, if I may say so, quickly changed, and upon returning, they were difficult to recognize, even with my unusually high level of information perception. You may ask, how long did this journey last? Wasn't he brought back to life, especially by his sister, who had experience? According to the emergency doctors, a clinical death lasted at least 6 or 7 minutes, and the rescued physicist himself was sure that he had been out of here for 55 minutes. Exactly 55. He remembered this number. To cut a long story short, I explained that much of what Vladimir Efremov said sounds very fascinating, but too detailed, so I will move on to the main part of his story. Remaining true to my calling, I tried to test everything in practice. If my current expanded thinking was amazingly clear and efficient, then maybe I can see and get answers to the questions of the material world that I left. For some reason I remembered broken TV. A trifle, but I'm telling you how it was. A reminder, 1996. Color TVs and VCRs were a source of pride at that time, and not everyone got them. And I saw it, my broken TV. But something else struck me. I saw not only the object itself, but simultaneously, through many channels or parameters. And I saw everything connected with it. Starting from the project, the extraction of metals required microseconds, and the assembly of finished devices in the workshop, to such trifles as the mood of a tester on the conveyor belt, and who had a scandal in the family, a quarrel with his mother-in-law, and hence a Salazi state of months. I saw all this at once, and suddenly realized that time was absent. After all, each channel had its own time. At the non-ferrous metal mine, its own time. In the factory shop, its own. I was outside the framework of time. I understood. I had access to as much information as I could carry. A huge array, and everything I saw, the TV touched with parts. Everything was clearly interconnected. There was no element of chance here. None. Everything had a cause and effect relationship. But something else is more interesting. In the very first days after returning home, I repaired my V's. I remembered what the essence of the malfunction was, and having replaced one part, the malfunction I saw right there, in the state of flight, I easily restored my device. Moreover, I raised another question, and I tried to get information about my real design. There was a difficulty that they could not solve in our bureau, and for a long time, there were months passed, but there was no progress. The work was stalled, and now, here, outside the framework of time and matter, I easily received an answer on how to eliminate the difficulty that had arisen. And later, after my stay in the clinic, I implemented this knowledge. The problem was solved. This is a striking confirmation of the fact of the information channel, which was available to me outside the framework of the material world. And it turned out that the solution to the problem itself looked simple enough, but something else was more important. And how exactly I got the answer to the question that tormented us all. This was completely unusual. And it's a shame that it's impossible to repeat this method. At first, it seemed to Vladimir that this unusual state of his thinking was just a useless attempt to delay to the inevitable end, because everything he thought would soon fade and stop. This was just a surge of brain activity, the final frame of a replayed film. It was curious chorus, how everything was arranged, but this new information was already useless. Although after the second attempt, after receiving an answer to the question that had tormented his bureau for 2 years, he nevertheless realized that this was not his brilliant insight, no, because much of what was available to him in that state was completely unfamiliar to him, was unknown, and like data from some library of the future, where the terms were different, and the knowledge of laws was of a completely different level, and he accepted them as a given. And not at all surprise his new level of education, so to speak. By the end of his flight, he realized that he was a follower in a pair that interacted in the field of information. Everything he learned was available to him only because there was another subject who opened the channels of information and interacting with him. Note that he never said the words God or angel, and he did not see any men with wings. Which brings us to Levashov's statement. Each of us will see something different in the next world. Everyone will be shown what is easier for him to understand and accept. The Roman legionnaire will see a centurion angel, and the alcoholic a kind doctor in a white coat. But further exploration of the new world stopped, and rather unceremoniously. Vladimir described it as a state when you are fast asleep, and someone is standing above you and resolutely shaking you, and demanding that you wake up. It was his sister who was able to restore his heartbeat and breathing. He even tried to resist, and wanted to prolong his flight in communication with the information field. After all, and the new state inspired and gave a lot of new knowledge, opened up unprecedented horizons. But no, the sister got her way. She was very surprised that her brother's face expressed sincere delight, and she asked what was going light. Why was he so glowing with joy? Because he almost died. Vladimir answered, there is no death, there is another life. Now, I know this for sure. Many years passed. Vladimir Efremov published a report describing his posthumous experience and later became a participant TV show, giving an interview to his colleague on the basis of which we were able to talk about an unusual fact, which, admittedly, everyone perceives differently. There are ardent skeptics who deny everything, even the very fact of Vladimir Efremov's existence. They say it's all a hoax. Tales for the feeble-minded. They say I googled it and there is no design bureau. This is not entirely true. And rocket burris are always closed structures, and you will not find data on Wikipedia. Okay, so be it. The skeptic insists, but if there was something, then there is nothing strange about it. And then oxygen starvation will show you even more tricks. Big deal, I solved a design problem. What a charade. Many see solutions in their dreams. Intuition and the subconscious, that's all the wisdom. Hearing such words, I always remember one famous mountaineer. He was often asked, why do you go to the mountains? To which he said, anyone who has ever climbed to the top knows everything himself, but you can't convince others with any words. It's exactly the same with mysticism. For some, incomprehensible facts are real. For others, this is the delirium of madmen. Agree. And many want to live in an understandable world, and the strange only infuriates and destroys peace. Therefore, and it is easiest to call all this delirium, right? Yes, it is all complicated. After all, and the hero of our story spent only 5 minutes outside the body. And what awaited him in 9 days? In 40, will Vladimir Efremov, any or each of us, survive there in the invisible world? Or will they dissolve? Will they disappear like I, and turning into a particle of energy, and deprived of the main thing, personality? Energy and matter in some form, of course, will remain. And personality. Alice, even those who return from the other world have no answer. All the best, dear friends. This channel is about mysticism, unsolved mysteries, and inexplicable phenomena of our world. Subscribe and view videos.